Hello, I'm Locke Meredith. I'd like to invite you to join me on the next Legal Lines, where my guest is Dr. Loren Scott. He is a professor emeritus at LSU, the Department of Economics for the Business College. He knows what he's doing. Been doing it for 45 years. He annually does an analysis of the state of Louisiana. What's he finding right now? Well, he looks at the past, what's going on now, and what's projected to happen in the future. Says there's going to be a recession in 23. He also says hopefully that we hold on to the existing jobs that we have, and that by 24 it's going to get better. So join us on the next Legal Lines with the Professor Emeritus, Dr. Loren Scott. Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates has served our community by airing Legal Lines, a community educational program for 18 years weekly to Baton Rouge and the surrounding areas. Watch Legal Lines at LockeMeredith.com or Cox Channel 1004.
Hi, I'm Sean Fagan of Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates. When insurance companies have been unfair, we've never been afraid to go to trial. Fighting hard to protect your rights, we never settle a case out of convenience. We only settle when it's right for you. Whether you hire us at all, give us a call.
Hello, welcome to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and I'm very pleased to have back on the show Dr. Loren Scott. He is a professor emeritus at LSU, the Department of Economics, the Business College. Hey. Dr. Scott, it's wonderful to have you back.
Locke, thanks.
Nice to shake your hand a few times.
Yeah, I enjoy that.
So let's dive in. You've done this for how many years, where you do these economic forecasts that look at kind of where we've been, where we are, where we think we're going for Louisiana and the various great economic regions that generate money?
We've been doing this for 40 years, actually.
Gosh.
I think we had either a 39th or 40th one last October.
And you're supported by all the big boys out there.
Well, we were very fortunate. We have some great sponsors out there that have kept us going. Matter of fact, we can't do it without the sponsors. There's kind of two sources of income that keeps it going. One is the sponsors. That's the most important thing. And then we do have some sales from the subscription sales to the document.
And I know Rolf McAllister with Business Report has been sponsoring this for a little while.
Well, what Rolf and Julio do, have done in the past, and now it's Julio, of course, since Rolf's retired. But they put on this big thing called the Top 100 Luncheon here in Baton Rouge, and there's typically around 600 to 700 people that show up for that.
Incredible.
Thing. It's really great.
So who are the top 100?
They are people like
all the big boys,
Turner
right?
Industries, Blue Cross, performance contractors, Cajun contractors, all the ones that you would probably, you would kind of know from operating here. From there to Benny's Car Wash to Calandro's, all these. And so they come there, they buy tables and things, and they do our forecast. And it's a very elaborate put on, and then we go from Baton Rouge to all across the state doing presentations.
And I want to show the folks, this is a serious compilation of work. It's very detailed. You have all kinds of sourced information. You study it. You're highly credentialed. And it looks at the various regions in Louisiana. What do you call those regions?
We call them metropolitan statistical areas.
Okay.
And these are areas that have been designated by the U.S. Census Department. They pick out different states.
So by the federal government?
Huh?
By the federal government?
By the federal government. They look at clusters of parishes where you have a lot of people mainly commuting into the central business district, for example, in New Orleans. St. Tammany Parish, for example, is in the New Orleans metropolitan area. So a lot of people from St. Tammany go into New Orleans to actually work. And so they have these clusters. And in Louisiana, there's about 45 parishes out of our 64 that are in what we call an MSA. The remainder of the parishes are what we call rural parishes. They are not in a metropolitan area. So there are 9 metropolitan areas in our state, and we'll do forecasts for each one of those 9. We'll do forecasts for the rural areas, and then we'll kind of sum them up to see where the state as a whole is going.
My recall from us doing this for a few years now is that you actually have access to these leaders, these business leaders, and you have communications with them to kind of get a feel for what they're thinking and what they're seeing on the ground.
Yeah, this is very unlike what you see in most other states. We've been very fortunate over time to have built up a level of trust with these folks where they know that when I call them, and I make about 200, 250 phone calls a year to these people around the state. And sometimes we're talking to people like Stevie Tubes at Turner Industries and the people down at Edison Swiss Shipyards, a very large employer down in the southern part of our state. And they know that they can talk to us, that we're not out to get them.
Right.
We just want the information. And matter of fact, some of them will say, look, we'll be glad to provide you with our information, just don't report us specifically, and they know we won't do that. So we're talking to them. We're talking to economic developers in each one of the metropolitan areas. We'll go to Michael Heck, who's the head of GNO Inc. in New Orleans, and he has a whole team of people that'll gather data for us, put it together.
Bottom line is they trust you.
Well, that's the bottom line, yeah. Because the first thing is they'll answer the phone when you call. That's the first thing you know, because most of these dudes, you try to talk to Stevie Toops, who's running our organization, employs 11,000 people all over the country.
Can't talk to those people.
You can't just naturally get in. So we developed a relationship with them over time, and it's one of the things that made it work. And so the good news is you can actually pick this up and you can find out, hey, this is what this company is doing in your area. This is why we're forecasting that maybe the area is going down or going up, because we're talking to people on the ground.
So what are the top 5 NSPs?
MSAs.
MSAs.
Yeah, the top 5 would be, you start with New Orleans, then Baton Rouge, and then it's Shreveport, Lafayette, and Lake Charles. So those are the 5 top ones.
And within those, do they bounce around sometimes depending on how much money's going in based on maybe federal government grants or whatever?
About the only 2 that bounce around a bit are Lake Charles and Houma. They sometimes change places. It depends upon, like for example, Lake Charles has a period where there's an unbelievable amount of construction going on over there. As a matter of fact, a period, I think it was from about 2015 to 2018, Lake Charles was actually the fastest growing metropolitan area in the country. But once you build a plant, it takes thousands of people to build the plant, it takes hundreds of people to operate it. So you build them and suddenly you start dropping off like that. And so for a period of time there, Houma started moving past Lake Charles to take their place, in the ranking. But then Houma, the price of oil dropped from $100 in 2014 to $30 at one point.
So less employment.
And then Hurricane Ida hit them, knocked them down another level. And so now Lake Charles is back in its place. But generally speaking, New Orleans has always been number 1, Baton Rouge number 2, Shreveport number 3.
I was reading the report, the executive primarily. It's so voluminous. And I really chuckled at there was a phrase in there you used that at times like these, a forecast is about as good as the paper you need in your bird's cage.
Yeah, it's what it's only good for. Or some people say that you should have written this on a little softer grade of paper. We'd have another very important use for it. But anyway,
explain why that is, because the factors are you make assumptions based on what you're learning on the ground.
Yeah, but you never know.
Stuff happens.
I once told my MBA students who I taught forecasting for 30 years, I said, forecasting is easy unless you're talking about the future. Then it gets tricky, and the reason is because you never know what's going to happen, especially if you're in a state like Louisiana that's an oil and gas state.
And gets hit every year by hurricanes.
Who could have, first of all, who could have guessed in 2014 that the Saudis, the oil price was rocking along at $100 a barrel, everybody was happy. Well, who could have guessed that the Saudis would suddenly say, you know what, we need to kill those shale plays that are going on in the United States. We're going to pump a bunch of oil on the market, drop the price down to 30, wipe them out of business, and we'll be the kings again. But who could have guessed they would? You can't forecast that. You can't forecast that Russia's going to invade Ukraine. Who could have forecasted that? So there's always something that's happening out there who could have predicted 2020? Who could have predicted the COVID shutdown? Nobody could predict that.
No way.
And so, the future is uncertain. And so sometimes you put out forecasts that are only good for lining the bottoms of cages. But other times, you're mainly providing people with a lot of information to think about.
Well, what I want to do on the next segment is let's dive into exactly what you're forecasting for the next couple of years, 2023 and 2024, and we'll tackle that on the next segment. This is Locke Meredith Legal Lines. My very special guest, Dr. Loren Scott. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Mitchell Meredith. Injuries happen when you least expect them to, making your life more complicated. At Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan & Associates, we know this and we strive to help each of our clients during these times. Whether you hire us at all, give us a call at 272-5555.
Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan & Associates has won for our clients over $175 million over the decades, but our greatest success is our clients who have chosen and trusted us to help them. Whether you hire us at all, give us a call. You've got nothing to lose.
I'm lawyer Collins Locke Meredith. Trust is important when hiring an injury law firm. At Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan Associates, thousands have trusted us and gotten the results they deserved. Visit us at LockeMeredith.com. Whether you hire us at all, give us a call, 272-5555.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith again. Very pleased to have back on the show Dr. Loren Scott. Dr. Scott, let's dive back in. So you talked about there was no way to predict all the stuff that happened from the previous forecast because so much bad stuff happened that you can't predict.
Right.
Kind of hit COVID and inflation and all the things that have just, the politics of the world, everything that you had to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many things that are still so many things going on that are very unpredictable.
Not a lot of change, honestly, other, I guess, in COVID dying down.
Well, I mean, the COVID thing is pretty much in a rearview mirror. We're starting to act more and more normal with regard to COVID. But, if you're in a state like ours, which is an energy state, obviously, and you have a country like Russia, who's producing the #2 producer of oil, a major producer of natural gas, and now suddenly, are those supplies going to get to the world market or not get to the world market? Are we going to embargo their stuff and keep them from getting the world market? What is that going to do to prices? That's always that's still very much up in the air right now.
Although the BRIC countries, the ones in, I guess you're in Europe and Asia, Eurasian areas, China, the Saudis, all these guys have kind of gotten together and they're creating their whole new kind of communications and capabilities of trading with each other. How do you do that?
Yeah, kind of what happened when the invasion first occurred, and we said we're not going to buy any more Russian oil, and more importantly, the companies that insure the ships that carry Russian oil said we're not going to insure your ships. And so for a while we saw the price of oil spike, and there were some things going on, because a bunch of Russian oil was suddenly taken off the market. But then what happened was China doesn't care whether they invaded Ukraine or not. India doesn't care whether they invaded Ukraine or not. Care. So, and then there were some ships that were not insured by these same people who said we're not going to insure it. So you just had a sudden switch around, change in trading patterns. The ships, the 3,700 of these very large crude carriers on the surface of the ocean, they just moved around so that the oil suddenly started flowing in the right direction. Now,
I actually read recently that the Russian economy is actually now stronger in its own currency. What is it? The ruble is actually stronger than it was before we did all this stuff.
I haven't read that, but I would be surprised. I think first of all, people have to understand that even though this is a massive landmass that Russia is, this is still a really poor country. Okay, I mean their gross national product, like I think we have 16% of the world's gross domestic product. They maybe make 0.5% of the world's gross domestic product. 1/2
of 1%.
I mean, it's not a very big number at all, even though they are massively large. This country is still way behind the world, which is what you expect from a communist country.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Those people in the English departments around the United States who think we should become communist are flaming idiots. That's all there is to it. If you look at, I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't have said that on TV before. But I mean, all you have to do is look at just a little bit of the data. Matter of fact, all you have to do is look at a little bit of the data on the countries decide to go socialist. I mean, a lot of people say, we need to be more like Europe. Well, look at Europe. Of the countries in Europe, I think there are 3. Luxembourg, which is about the size of East Baton Rouge Parish, Switzerland, and I believe Norway, which has all that North Sea oil. Those are the only ones that have a higher per capita income than Louisiana. Why do we want to mimic countries worse off than Louisiana, for God's sake? You don't want to do that. And so, I mean, people don't begin to appreciate how much more wonderful their life has been because it's based on capitalism versus socialism. I mean, it's just, the difference is dramatic, as it turns out.
So when you contact the big guys and you communicate with them, and you provide this very thoughtful, educated analysis of kind of all the information that's out there, what are they looking at? What are they looking for? Because I want to look for what they're looking for, because they run the biggest businesses in the world, sometimes for sure.
I think probably the one thing they would like the most is some predictability, some certainty about what's coming in the future. And for the last several years, there's been no certainty about that at all. You have no idea what's coming next out of Washington, D.C. If you look at this latest proposal coming out, for example, that Biden has put for the new budget, I mean, look
another
what is in,
$6 trillion.
look at the regulations that are in there.
Right.
Look at the new taxes proposed. I mean, uncertainty is the bane of economic investment. You just don't do it so much if you have no idea what's coming next. And I think that's one of the problems we've had probably for the last, certainly of the last 3 administrations, at least 2 of them, but you just never know what's coming next because at least 2 of them have been very anti-business, and which means more regulation. And that's always a problem. And I think most people I talk to would just love to be able to say, just tell us what the rules are, but don't keep changing the rules on us. So that's really important to them right now.
Well, and
by the way, the other major problem they have is finding workers. I don't care which industry it is. I don't care if it's a grocery store or a shipbuilder or somebody in the petrochemical industry or somebody in oil and gas extraction. Everybody's having trouble finding help, especially help that'll show up on time, ready to work, and can pass a drug test. If they can do those 4 things, man, they love that. Anybody can pass those 4 things.
And what is your understanding of why it's hard to find a worker today?
Well, part of it right now, part of the reason behind the worker shortage right now, well, I think there's 2 things, but the number one thing I think is that people really fail to appreciate how large those government stimulus checks were during COVID. Because it was so large, there was a dramatic increase in extra savings in the United States. The Department of Commerce says $3 trillion in extra savings. Well, a lot of people looked around and said, I can either go to work at this really crummy job, let's face it, a really crummy job, doesn't pay very much, or I can live off of this stash of savings I had. And I think a number of people have done that. The other thing is, I think people fail to appreciate.
Now that money's starting to run out.
Money's starting to run out. That $3 trillion is now down about $1 trillion.
Okay.
So it is starting to run out. So now you're starting to see the employment numbers really pick up. Like yesterday, this morning, the number came out 310,000 people employed last month. So that's an indication to me that it's starting to peter out. And so that's part of what's going on. But the other thing is, I think people fail to appreciate what's happened with the income distribution in this country. A lot of people look at the income distribution and say, we look at this top group and look at the bottom group and say, this has been growing, this distance has been growing, and it's bad. And I ask them, well, what do you think we should do? And the answer is take money from this group and give it to this group.
That doesn't work though.
And I tell them, well, if you do that, guess what's going to happen to income distribution the next year? Absolutely nothing. Because the income distribution is based on pre-tax income, earned income, okay? And you're taking taxes away, that doesn't change the pre-tax, and you're giving it to people down here, doesn't change their earned income, doesn't change it at all. But there's another key reason we'll talk about when we come back.
All right, well, we'll continue in the next segment. This is Locke Meredith, Legal Lines, my very special guest, Dr. Loren Scott. We'll be right back. Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates has served our community by airing Legal Lines, a community educational program for 18 years weekly to Baton Rouge and the surrounding areas. Watch Legal Lines at LockeMeredith.com or Cox Channel 1004.
Hi, I'm Sean Fagan of Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates. Open the phone book or look online. There are plenty of lawyers to choose from. And if you ask any of them, they'll agree that the vast majority of claims settle without ever having gone to trial. And I'll tell you, any lawyer can settle a claim. It's not hard to settle a claim, but it takes hard work to get a client what he or she deserves. At Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan Associates, we have a proven record of working hard for our clients. Whether you hire us at all, give us a call.
Legal Lines has interviewed Louisiana Supreme Court justices, appellate trial court judges, federal, state, and local government leaders, including U.S. senators and Congress members. Watch at Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates website, LockeMeredith.com or Cox Channel 1004. Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. I'm very pleased to have back on the show Dr. Loren Scott. He's a professor emeritus, LSU, Economics Department, Business College. Let's dive back into what we were talking about. There's a lot of talk about too much money at the top, too little money at the bottom. Let's take it from the top, give it to the bottom, solves all the problems. That doesn't work.
Well, I mean, part of the deal here is that we do that. We give a tremendous amount of money.
Progressive tax and income tax.
But it doesn't change the income distribution at all. The income distribution is one of the worst measures that you can look at in our society for determining how well we're taking care of that bottom group. But let's talk about the bottom group.
Why? Why is it the worst kind of indica of how we're taking care of it? We got tons of social programs.
The people that I see that look at this say, this is not right, this is not fair, just, whatever, moral, and we need to take money from this group and give it to this group. But we do. But you can't tell by looking at that. But here's what you will find if you look at Phil Graham, Dr. Phil Graham, who was a professor of economics at Texas A&M and became a U.S. Senator, a very famous U.S. Senator. He, along with another gentleman, had done some work. And what they, looking at the data, and what they found is you look at those bottom two segments, okay? What you'll find is the bottom two segments is that the labor force participation rate of the bottom segment is 36%. The labor force participation rate of the group right above them is like 96%, okay?
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, but if you look at the take-home money, all money, earned income and transfer payments.
After tax money,
yeah,
right?
After that, and all that, plus transfer payments, what you'll find is the difference between the take-home pay of this group and this group is 3%.
How's that right?
So, well, the reason is because this group is getting about $40,000 a year in transfer payments. So we're a lot, you're getting things like food stamps, free health care, free housing, all kinds of free stuff, okay, free phones, etc. And so you ask the question, why would anybody try to work to get into this group here, which typically is not very great jobs, for 3 stinking %? And you got to go to work.
They're not stupid.
Get a babysitter, you got to get a car and all that. Why would you do that?
They're not stupid.
They're not stupid. They're acting very, very rationally. And so part of the reason we're having trouble getting people to go to work is we don't have work requirements down here.
And we used to.
We used to have that. Matter of fact, a Democratic president, Clinton, put them in place, which is what we needed, I think. There's no question that you take care of people who can't work.
Of course,
you take care
it's
of
a safety net.
Biblically, we say that.
But it's not a lifestyle. It's a safety net to get back up on your feet.
You've got to have work requirements, or people are going to make rational decisions. They're going to stay at home. And so that's part of the reason we've had some difficulties in getting people to go to work.
Let's dive into your forecast for Louisiana and the say top 5 regions for 2023 and 2024.
Well,
what you seeing?
Well,
big question. We're going to have a recession or not?
Well, first of all, I think there is going to be a national recession. I don't think you can.
There is going to be one.
I think there is going to be one. I don't think that the Federal Reserve can attack inflation without this level of inflation without creating a recession. They're going to raise interest rates, which is already nailing.
Which is already happening.
The housing that's already killing the housing. The housing starts will probably drop 20 to 25% in this country. So there's all the wood manufacturers and all the people that work in that industry are going to get laid off. There's a lot of people get laid off because of that. Anything you buy on credit, cars, appliances, TV
credit
sets,
cards,
etc.
anything
that you buy on credit, the sales are going to go down. Okay, you just can't avoid this. Okay, and so I think we're going to have a national recession. Don't think it's going to be very deep. Don't think it's going to be very long. I think the good news is I think Louisiana's employment is going to go right straight through that. And there's couple of reasons for that. Number one, if you look historically, we've had 8 national recessions since 1970. Louisiana grew through 4 of them. Okay,
that's interesting.
And part of the reason for that is all the things I mentioned that people quit buying that you finance are durable goods, cars and apartment complexes and things like that. Well, we have no car manufacturers in the state. We have no appliance manufacturers, TV manufacturers.
But we produce oil and gas.
But we produce non-durable goods, and people still buy gasoline.
Yep.
Okay, and we don't. Whereas Alabama, which has car manufacturers out there, they'll really go down. We have a tendency to go down a little bit during the national recession.
Now the kink in that concerns me in that kind of analysis is the federal government's policies on the whole carbon world and all of that.
Well, that's almost that's big and that's non-trivial. But let me mention one other thing here, and that's that If you look at the 50 states of the United States, Louisiana ranks 49th in terms of getting all the way back from COVID. We still are probably about 18% below employment where we were pre-COVID.
Okay.
Right? Now, part of that, you say, well, people say, oh, there you go, that's the Louisiana economy. No, we've been through 5 natural disasters, 3 major hurricanes, a major flood in Lake Charles, and Winter Storm Uri back in 2021. Well, we are in the process of recovering that. Just the process of recovering creates jobs. I mean, we live in South Louisiana here. You go out to the end of your driveway and you see a fire ant bed. What do? You kick the sucker. Then you come back the next day and what has happened? They're putting the fire. Well, the same thing is happening in Lake Charles and in Houma. Okay, they're putting their economy back together, and that alone creates a lot of jobs. A lot of insurance money coming in, a lot of federal help coming in. They're in the process. So I think the fact that we don't have very many durable goods, the fact that we're recovering still from COVID and from these natural disasters, is able to keep us growing right straight through this summer.
So you think because we're going to be coming out of those 2 punches,
yeah,
we're going to do better than most of the regions?
I see our employment doing much better than most of the other regions. Yeah.
So hit on the top 5 real quick, how you see each of those doing from a general standpoint.
New Orleans coming back pretty well, except New Orleans has convention business. And the convention business, quick number, prior to COVID, 135 conventions. They're at 100 now in 2022, after COVID. People are just not having conventions as much, so that's going to hold them back a bit. Baton Rouge is really good shape. We have a very large number, multi-billion dollars worth of industrial construction. Some of it just getting started, some others really big projects I think will be announced in the next year or so. So people like Performance Contractors, Turner Industries, and all these, Cajun Industry, going to be coming back very strong. Our engineering firms across the state are just slammed with doing front-end engineering design work. And that's the same thing is true over in Lake Charles. Lake Charles is a long ways from recovering because of the hurricanes and the flood they had. Okay, they're way below.
It's incredible what they went through. We got 1 minute.
So they're coming back. Okay, Houma is a problem because they got hit by Ida. They're way back, and the president and his administration are really trying to stop oil and gas, and especially oil and gas in the Gulf of Mexico. So it's that part. Lafayette's doing okay. Lafayette is doing well despite the oil and gas thing, so they're doing pretty darn good. Once you start going north now, things get a little bit dicier. It's a little tougher in Alexandria, Monroe, and Shreveport.
And what are the business leaders? They taken well to your prediction, your forecast?
Yeah, I mean, I got no pushback from them, and so I think they're okay.
Well, that's fantastic news.
Yeah.
Dr. Scott, it's been
Pleasure.
wonderful to have you back on.
Always good to be
This is
back.
Locke Meredith, Legal Lines, my very special guest, Dr. Loren Scott. Thank you for being with us.